we make to fiscal policy. I have on the show with me a senior development analyst from Steers Business. Actually, just Steers now. So that's going to take some getting used to because I've been calling it Steers Business for a very long time. But yes, she's a senior development analyst for Steers.
Thanks for having me, Sandra.
What questions do you have about our budget deficit? What questions do you have about our debt servicing bill? All of that. Let's talk about it within this hour. Here's today's business hard fact. According to the Federal Ministry of Finance, the federal government debt servicing payments between January and were higher than revenues. What that means, like I explained last week, is that Naira and dollar meet first 4 months this year went to payments. Also, any money the federal government spent in those 4 months on anything else from debt. So salary, so capital projects, so all more debt. And the Economist Intelligence Unit says that the federal government's debt servicing to revenue ratio is 118%. It's the worst one in the world. So we're talking about why we're having these issues. We're going to talk as well about how to salvage the situation, if it's even salvageable. Last week, if we focused on monetary policy. I advise that you go and listen to it on our website. Our website is nigeriainfo.fm. But for now, Gbemisola, let's talk about the federal government's borrowing. So for years, they borrowed and borrowed and borrowed for debt servicing, right? Whenever anybody raised the alarm, the government will say, our debt to GDP ratio is too low, we're good to go. Why were so many people fixated on debt to GDP instead of debt to revenue? Because government will still use revenue to pay back debt, not GDP.
Yeah. So people would usually fixate on debt to GDP because it's one way to measure debt sustainability across the world. Like even the IMF would measure, one of the ways that the IMF would measure debt sustainability is through the debt to GDP ratio. And the IMF has like a benchmark of, I think 35%. So your debt to GDP ratio should not exceed that. However, like you said, so the reason why they used debt to GDP ratio to measure like debt sustainability is because GDP tells you how much a country earns and tells you the potential for taxing that country. So, for instance, if a country had a GDP of 10 trillion and you were to earn tax from that country, then there's a possibility that even if you're not, there's a possibility that you can, service your debts from earning from that economy. And in many developed countries, countries have tax to GDP ratios of like 30%, meaning that they are fully earning money and earning revenue from, the GDP, which is why, if you're looking at debt sustainability, you would look at debt to GDP as a measure. However, in Nigeria, our tax to GDP ratio is less, I don't think it's even up to 5%. So it's about 3%. And that means that even though if we're using, so debt to GDP would not give you an accurate picture of the Nigerian government's ability to sustain its debts, because we are not even taking advantage of the GDP anyway, and the government isn't even taxing the GDP as much as it should. Mm-hmm. So that's a faulty. And I mean, I don't fault anyone for looking at debt to GDP. Mm-hmm. It's a measure, like I've said, but it doesn't fully capture the government's ability to sustain debt today. And there are different ways to look at debt sustainability. You can either look at liquidity or solvency. Mm-hmm. Liquidity is saying, can the government meet its short-term obligations? Can the government pay its debt in 3 months, in 6 months, in 9 months? However, solvency is looking at, can the government pay its debt in the long term? The 30-year bond that the government is, issuing out today, when 30 years elapses, will the government be able to pay back? So debt to GDP is able to I feel like it speaks more to the solvency, not really the liquidity, because liquidity is today. Do you have money to pay today? If your creditors all come today and say they want to record their debts, can you pay today? It also informs things like debt servicing that you had rightly spoken about. Debt servicing would not look at GDP. So if we're going to look at debt servicing today, we can't be looking at whether or not GDP is enough. It's revenue that we look at, because the funds, the debt and the interest payments are due today, tomorrow, next year, next month, for the rest of the year, not in the long term.
And again, the IMF's use of debt to GDP as the benchmark, isn't that because they assume that there's a high tax to GDP ratio, which doesn't apply in Nigeria? So shouldn't there always be a caveat that debt to GDP is a poor indicator for Nigeria?
So I wouldn't say it's a poor indicator. It's an indicator nonetheless. If you look at the DMO's debt sustainability reports, debt to GDP is an indicator that they use amongst other indicators. So in the DMO's debt sustainability report, there are at least 10 indicators that they look at to sort of measure whether or not a country is doing well. So I don't think that it's a faulty measure, because, like I said, it shows the potential for the country to earn revenue and to improve its and to meet its debt obligation. So the fact that we're doing less than 5%, Nigeria's current tax situation, where for instance, VAT, we're charging the least, one of the least across other African countries. The average in Africa is like 18%. VAT in Nigeria is 7.5%, and that's after it was just recently increased from 5%. Personal income tax, there's a lot of is not fully implemented. There's a lot of compliance issues there. So the potential for tax revenue in Nigeria is very, very high. There's a huge potential for it. So when looking at debt to GDP, it's not exactly faulty. However, when in the dire debt situation that we're in today, you cannot be looking at debt to GDP ratio. You can't be looking at debt to GDP ratio when your debt servicing to revenue ratio is above 100%. Like, it's almost as if you're being oblivious of the crisis that you're in. So, it's not faulty, but like right now, in the urgent situation we're in, we shouldn't be looking at debt to GDP.
There are federal fiscal responsibility guidelines that should, capital letters, should stop the federal government from borrowing beyond particular thresholds. Have those rules been followed?
So largely, I believe they have. Largely, I use that very loosely because. So I'll talk about. So debt to GDP is an example, right? So everyone would follow the IMF's criteria of maintaining debt to GDP at, I think it's less than 35%.
Okay.
So maintain your debt to GDP at 35%. So that's one of the criteria, right? And Nigerian government has not crossed 5%. I think we're even less than, I'll need to check, but I think we're less than 30%. So we're still pretty within the threshold. However, if you look at other measures like not borrowing ways and means from the CBN beyond 5% of your previous year's revenue, we've crossed that by miles. So, I feel like it's a bit of mix and match, but we're meeting it to a large extent, and in some areas we're not.
How
the federal government isn't.
How was the federal government able to get away with it?
So I think that with the CBN's one, right, ways and means financing crossed the 5% threshold, if I'm not mistaken, in 2020. And 2020 was a peculiar year for the entire world, right?
Yes.
For the first time, and an example of how peculiar it was is, for the first time, Nigeria got a loan from the IMF, and the IMF did not add any conditionalities. There were no, most of the conditions that were attached to that loan were not conditions per se in the real sense of it. They were just recommendations that the IMF was giving the Nigerian government to sort of sustain its fiscal space, right? But then 2020 was peculiar. The government wasn't earning as much revenue, not just in Nigeria, across the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So it would have been tone deaf to not meet the government at the point of its need at the time. People were literally dying. So the government needed the CBN, and the government also had to sort of step up and do whatever it took to, improve revenue and help the Nigerian economy. So I think that's when it's started. And I mean, with debt, right, it starts slow and then creeps up on you. Today you're borrowing 1 billion here, 3 billion there. Before you know, it's 30 billion. So it's almost like they just let it sort of creep in and attack us.
Lagos, if you just tuned in, you can join the conversation. 0700-993-993 993 01465-7190. That second number is for our women only. Men only, 0700-993-993. I've got Wemisola Alonge on the show with us. She is the Senior Development Analyst for Steers, and she's talking to us today about what changes the Finance Ministry should make to fiscal policy. We've talked so far about our debt to revenue ratio. We've talked about what went wrong there. We've talked about how they were able to get away with it. Now, my question is, how serious of a problem is it for debt service payments to get to 118% of revenue? Because a lot of the government officials who have been questioned about this have given answers that Nigerians have scoffed at or laughed at or mocked. So I have to ask you, you're the expert, how serious of a problem is it for debt service payments to get to 118% of revenue? Please paint a picture for us, of the constraints that the federal government may start facing.
Okay. So first thing is, it's really bad. I mean, any politician that you'd ask or anyone in government right now will give you a diplomatic answer just because of how the situation is. However, one way to think that the different effects of this, right? First effect is when the government is no longer earning enough to meet its debt obligation, it starts to rationalize and prioritize its spending. So an example would be, if you look at the recent presentation of the budget for January to April this year, you'd see that the federal government's debt servicing ratio was about 1.9 trillion compared to our earnings of I think it was 1.3, right? So what that means is that the Nigerian government had to then decide on what to spend on. So you've already used up all your revenue on debt service. So what are you going to spend on? Usually when such situations happen, right, capital expenditure, which is supposed to be used to improve the economy, takes the back seats. And we've seen that capital expenditure for January to April was 58%. However, with capital expenditure, right, there are times when, one caveat that I'd make here is that there is sometimes the capital expenditure the government doesn't drop the money for capital expenditure in lump sums. So they just drop it, here and there, and then before the end of the year, they sort of push into money into that. So that might happen later. However, we've used up, like I said, we've used up all our revenue for that. Another thing that would suffer is recurrent expenditure. So things like salary payments. And an example would be today, I believe ASU is requesting for 1 trillion naira from the federal government. When the government is spending 1.9 trillion to pay for debts, right? That's that's a pressing issue. It's just as pressing as ASU strikes. So you'd expect that the government sort of rationalize what it decides to spend its money on. So things like ASU strikes will continue to linger because the government is spending money on debt servicing. Another thing, and this is a more pressing issue, is the outlook of this to creditors, right? When creditors are giving you money, and this is why I mentioned like how debt to GDP ratio might not be a good gauge of our debt situation as much as debt service to revenue or debt to revenue ratio. So when creditors give you money, right, the interest rates or the terms of the loans are highly dependent on your ability to pay back. When you look at debt, so everyone is saying, oh, Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio is still less than 35%, so we're good. Countries like Japan have debt to GDP ratios of over 200%, yet nobody is coming to their door to say that Japan is in a debt crisis, because whether you like it or not, the chances of them actually paying back their loans are much higher than Nigeria's, right? So when you look at situations like that, like when the Nigerian government's debt revenue to GDP, debt servicing to revenue ratio is really high and it has crossed 100%, it tells your creditors, the rest of the creditors, and even potential creditors that there's a high possibility of you not paying back your loans. If your revenue continues to dry up and you have less and less sources to borrow from, you could default on their loans. And how do they react to that? They react to that through high interest payments, or high interest rates rather. This year, and the Ministry of Finance has had to recall Euro bonds that it wanted to issue because the interest rates were just high. And how much are these Euro bonds? Maybe 1 billion. The interest rate for your 1 billion Euro bond is higher than the interest rate for 4 billion Euro, for the $4 billion dollar Euro bond that you issued maybe last year or 2 years ago. So what that means is that the capital market believes that your potential or your ability to pay back the loans is a lot less than it was before. And they would want to attach high interest rates to those loans so that even if you pay, or even if you start paying and you don't finish, at least they would have gotten a huge chunk of their money back from you.
Yeah.
And what that means is that if we keep borrowing with these high interest rates, the debt service to revenue ratio would keep getting worse because we would keep having to pay high interest rates on these loans. So that's the kind of situation we're in now. Revenue is not increasing, and there's no it doesn't seem like it's going to increase anytime soon. So creditors are going to want to sort of shield themselves from the shocks and the possibility of loan defaults. And the way they do that is by increasing interest rates on further loans. And in some cases, even completely, not giving out loans to Nigeria anymore, and we don't want that. So that's just a summary.
Well, I did ask you to paint us a picture, and boy, did you paint one. Lagos, join the conversation. 0700-993-993-993. That's for men. Women, call us on 01-465-7190. Do you have questions for our expert on the show? She is a senior development analyst from Steers, and she's talking to us about Nigeria's fiscal policy, Nigeria's fiscal situation, and what changes the finance ministry should make. 99.3, hello. Sorry about that. Give us a call back if you can. 99.3, hello.
Hello, Sandra. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your name, sir?
Yeah, this is your minister from Defense, Achike from Fiscal. Good afternoon to Demi Sola, who I've been missing. I don't know where you hid that, Sandra. Sandra, discovered the oxy spirit too, because you know, like they drink Bobby, now why to the talk? So, my question to Demi Sola would be like, first of all, when you mention tax in Nigeria, I feel why most people don't really like hearing the word tax is that in Nigeria, most people have a case of they feel like they are paying for a lot of things they are not seeing. I know, like even in UK, I have people in UK, they complain of taxes, but at least they see what they are paying for. Then secondly, in terms of how they spend the money, like for me, these rail tracks, it doesn't make sense that we were making more money when we didn't have this rail track. Like, let me say, if the money for this train was used for, I don't know, repairing our refinery, we would have gotten more bang for our buck, because like for now, none of the rails are really working. Like the rail is also one of the biggest downturn. And I also wanted to know her opinion on like this stuff they were talking about implementing, like sacking people of over 50 and to reduce costs and some. But for me, I believe let's even start with them reducing the cost of governance. We have been shouting about that one since. The money that we're paying a senator for a month is what they spend to train a soldier in America. Thank you.
All right, Ashike, thank you very much for calling. Bemi?
Okay, so
I've got 2 minutes before break. Is 2 minutes enough?
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
So the first question about taxes, indeed, Nigeria has a trust. Nigerians have a low trust. Nigerians don't trust the government. Nigerians don't, and several surveys have shown this. Several times when people ask, "Oh, is it good to not pay your taxes?" Nigerians actively say it's not good, but they would rather not pay their taxes because they cannot see the results of what they're paying for, and that's very valid. It's difficult for Nigerians to put their money down if they're not sure of where the money is going to. However, it's almost like a vicious cycle. If you don't pay your taxes, you will not see any benefits. You won't see infrastructure. When you see no infrastructure, you won't pay your taxes. So it's important for the government to first, with the taxes it has gotten, actually push, to improve the implementation of infrastructure projects and things like that. If you check Victoria Island, for instance, the Sukuk bonds that were raised are used, like they used it to fix the Ahmadu Bello Way. And if you go on that road, the signpost that says, "Oh, this was built with the Sukuk bonds," when you're driving, and the road is really smooth. When you're driving on that road, if you were part of the people who actually subscribe to that bond, you're like, yes, I mean,
my money is working.
To see my money being used.
Okay. Hold that thought. We're going to expand on it when we come back from this break, because Achike asked a really, really insightful question there, and I want us to explore it a bit more. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. Legals, don't go away.
Do you desire to migrate or to work in Canada or the USA? Well, if yes, Get Sponsored Jobs in Canada is here to help you actualize those abroad dreams of yours. We have immigration visa for Canada. We also have direct employment with employers in Canada and the US for jobs like nursing, factory workers, security personnel, mortuary attendants, and caregivers. This is a full package that comes with a job offer, accommodation, flight ticket, and work visa. Currently, we have 20 job slots available. We also process student admission and visa. We also have both skilled and unskilled jobs in the UK, Denmark, Sweden, South Korea, Japan, Israel, Greece, Kuwait, and Bahrain. What are you waiting for to start living the life while earning in dollars? We have very limited slots available. You can call us on 070 318 59781, 070-318-59781, or email us at getsponsoredjobsincanada@gmail.com. Getsponsoredjobsincanada@gmail.com for more details. Hurry now while there is still available slots at a very affordable price.
This is an infomercial.
More conversation, more talk, more right after this. This is The Voice Note on 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
You know, it echoed in this room. Look, Aliko and I go back a long way. He's done phenomenally well. About 2 decades done phenomenally well. Jim, Mike Adenuga and co. Let me tell you what they all have in common. They are all very combative personalities. Because of that, no regulator will go to them and try nonsense. Because most of them know how to deal with that regulator. We have to move beyond that.
Now, rent money business loan shop also. You don't go pay any money for the first 4 weeks. And once you clear the balance, your next loan will reach 99% more money with interest rate way better pass. Just enter internet, type rentmoney.com or call 0700 5500.
And we are back. It's Dangote Bag of Goodies Season 3. Yes, spell Dangote and become a multi-millionaire. Category 1, pick up the scratch card in bags of Dangote cement and win instantly. Category 2, pick up the scratch cards in bags of Dangote cement to spell DANGOTE and qualify to win a #1 million star prize. Category 3, pick up the scratch cards in bags of Dangote cement to spell DANGOTE and qualify to win #5 million mega star prize. When you pick an alphabet, then eagle. One of the alphabets must carry the Dangote Eagle logo for you to win the mega star prize. Offer runs from 5th July to 31st October 2022. Terms and conditions apply.
Mudiame University, Irua, Edo State invites applications for qualified students for admission into the following degree programs for the year 2020-2023 academic session: Civil Engineering, Computer Engineering, Electrical and Electronic Engineering, Food Science and Technology, Material and Metallurgical Engineering, Mechanical Engineering, Mass Communication, Accounting, Entrepreneurship, Economics, Chemistry, Computer Science, Software Engineering, Biotechnology, Physics with Electronics and Mathematics. Apply now for instant admission. Visit www.mudiameuniversity.edu.ng/prospective-students or apply directly at the University Campus, Idumabi, Irua, Edo State. For more information, email info@mudiameuniversity.edu.ng or call 0815-978-7118. Mudiame University, Mind of Innovation.
It's ShopRite's one-day sale. Buy Molpa 20-pack panty liners at 399 naira 99 kobo and save. It's for one day only. 10th of August 2022. Save more only at ShopRite.
Imagine a life with zero worries. Imagine a world where you're relaxed and free, where all your dreams.
With Page Financial, you have zero worries when it's time to pay your bills, rent, school fees, and vacation. We'll be here making it easy for you.
Visit our website www.pagefinancials.com or call 017007243. Page Financials, taking you further.
ITEL TV. It's time to enjoy better life with ITEL TV. Go for ITEL TV. Buy ITEL TV and enjoy ITEL TV. Wow, ITEL TV, the best for home offices and other places of different types. 19 inches, 32 inches, and 43 inches with super bright and perfect sound quality. It's durable, also affordable. This is the best time to buy all range of ITEL TV. Don't buy just any TV. Buy ITEL TV. ITEL, enjoy better life.
Waiting you sabi about the beautiful game. You there for the life and style, fantasy leagues, bass goals, ginger and okto, breaking down the stats even to the MVPs, taking no L's and only for the W's. I beg, then Showmax Pro get news for you. Football season is back. Live, e-choke. Watch the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, anywhere on any screen. Mado. Stream the action from Super Sport, live on Showmax Pro. Sign up at showmax.com.
You don't hear of what them call contributory pension scheme? You don't even think of how life could be sweet after you don't retire? Sit down, make I yarn you matter. National Pension Commission, PENCOM, gets plenty of book where they don't even use. Make sure, say, wuru and PGBT. No enter how them they protect your money. As them they make sure, say, your money go the enter sharply direct. PENCOM people, but no fit thief your money as them don't arrange computer the way where no go fit happen. Both PENCOM plus the PFA and PFC, them do operate for waiting on you, they call transparency. Try this one be like open ballot system where you they see waiting that they do. I go they say what they do. All the people where they inside this matter now professional as them they touchlight your money every day. Then they check PFA to see as them they help your money grow. See jollification as you go just sit down can't pay and your money go they grow. Not to the smell of top requirement. Or it will say make we they say for any day. Make we use this big opportunity so that we go fit get peace of mind for retirement. For more information, call 0946 10668 or touchlight us for www.pencom.gov.ng. Pencom!
Guy, what's going on?
You know my dilemma with my phone now.
You call that one phone. So why are you so happy?
I got tired of hiding the phone. So I went to the Samsung store to see what I can afford. Samsung has a plan called Flex Pay that allows you to pay as low as 3,000 naira for any Samsung device of your choice and complete payment over a period of 3 to 12 months. I sharply picked a 6-month payment plan and I got a Galaxy A23.
This is a machine. You have been dulling yourself, oh? Find Samsung Flex Pay and own your device right away without breaking your pocket. Terms and conditions apply. Hurry now while stock lasts.
Yes, so we don't come again. Dangote bag of goodies season 3 don't show. Yes, so spell Dangote sharp make you become millionaire. Category 1, Alele pick scratch card inside bag of Dangote cement and win straight. Category 2, pick scratch card inside Dangote cement bag. Take use and spell DANGOTE. Make you stand chance to win 1 million naira star prize. Category 3, pick scratch card inside Dangote cement. Take and spell DANGOTE. Make you stand chance to win 5 million naira mega star prize. If one alphabet carry Dangote Eagle picture for body, make sure say one alphabet gets Dangote Eagle picture on top am for you to win the Mega Star Prize. This offer go run from 5th July to 31st October 2022. Terms and conditions dey sao.
A living. You probably own a business, work for one, or want to start one. Business is central to your life. But do most business shows really speak to you?
Today on the show, the billion-dollar valuation of
Balogun and Broad does. Let's talk about the stock market and Alaba market. Let's talk about share IPOs and diesel supply LPOs. Let's talk about Broad Street.
The Nigerian Stock Exchange recorded an all-time high of...
And Balogun Street.
The maximum I was spent on fuel to and fro was 4,000.
On Balogun and Broad, Wednesdays at 5.
I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. What changes should the finance ministry make to fiscal policy? Before the break, we got a brilliant question from Achike. And it's a question that Nigerians often ask, you know, and there's a chicken and egg question there. Should taxes rise first to pay for the services, or should services come first to justify higher taxes? I feel like this is an I beg to differ debate question. We'll think about whether or not, you know, there are enough points on both sides for this to be for this to be a topic during the tournament. But Wemi, what do you think? Wemi, by the way, is a senior development analyst for Steers Business, and she's on the show today talking to us about what the finance ministry should be doing differently about Nigeria's debt crisis. Wemi, what do you think should be happening here? Should taxes rise first to pay for the services, or should services come first to justify higher taxes?
I think that at the scale that Nigerians want the country to develop, at least for it to be beneficial to them, taxes have to rise. And like I was saying before we had to leave, there's almost a vicious cycle, right? If you don't pay your taxes, you don't see the results. You don't see the results, you don't want to pay your taxes because you can't see the results. But then I was given an example of the Ahmadu Bello Sukuk bond. So when the Sukuk bond was issued, and like whenever you pass that road, the road is so smooth, very beautiful to drive on, very like it looks, it's a good place to be on. So if you're passing there, right, and there's a signpost there that says, "Oh, this was funded by the Sukuk bond," and if you subscribe to the Sukuk bond, you would feel a sense of pride knowing that the money that you put down was used for this project that you are currently enjoying. So sometimes, I mean, it might just have, the government might have to precede the tax payments increase by communicating what the taxes are used for. So tell us how much you've made in taxes for the year. Tell us what you've used that particular amount for. So, and I mean, I don't blame Nigerians for knowing that, I mean, the trains that we're enjoying today are benefits of, you know, loans that were gotten from China and things like that. If I saw a road today that leads to my house and the government said, "Oh, this was used," I mean, you don't need to do a signpost, but just continuous communication with Nigerians about what you're using the money for. And I mean, if you told people today that, you know, we made 1 trillion from taxes this month, we're giving this 1 trillion to ASU strike lecturers so that they can stop the ASU strike. There's a sense of, I guess, I mean, it makes people eager to also pay their taxes. So the government would have to proceed with communication. However, if Nigerians want an improved economy and improved Nigeria, they're going to have to pay taxes. But I'm going to come back to the taxes. There's a lot more to unpack in the tax issue. But I think he had a question as well about why did they use money for trains instead of the refinery? And one thing I'll say here is there's no either or with infrastructural development. It's very difficult to decide. I mean, it's a very difficult conversation and difficult debate to have. How do you decide whether to spend on infrastructure or spend on education? Or how do you decide to spend on healthcare versus roads, right? Because if you do not fix the roads, the ambulances that pass through to take people from their homes to the hospitals would have to pass that road as well. So it's a very difficult conversation.
It's a delicate balance to strike.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with the government, doing a little here, a little there. The trains, for instance, transportation infrastructure is so critical for Nigeria because it has a huge multiplier effect. It reduces the cost of transporting goods, people, food, and many other things. One of the reasons why food is so expensive and food inflation continues to rise is because many transporters, and this is something that the Food Marketers Association of Nigeria, I've forgotten what the full association name is, complained about some years ago, was that the cost of illegal taxation on the roads is so high, and that's why they have to transport that money and they have to transfer that cost to the consumers.
That's right.
When you're moving goods from from the north to Lagos, and you have to stop at there's several checkpoints, and people have to pay illegal funds. If there was a train that moved people from maybe Kano to Lagos and moved food from Kano to Lagos, they won't need to pass all those illegal tax points, and then it will also be faster and more secure. Cost of food wastage would reduce significantly. So these are the things that the rail lines are set to achieve. So it's quite difficult, refinery versus rail line, and the refinery has its own issues. It's so complex. We can't even.
That would require one full hour, I think. That would require one full hour.
It's so complex.
It is. It really, really is. But I'm wondering, right? You've talked about what our paying back of old debt will mean for new lenders. You've said that new lenders, will be very hesitant to lend to us, since they're seeing that the federal government doesn't have any free revenue to pay them back. Is there a risk of sovereign debt default? What will that look like? Paint us another picture.
Thankfully, we've not been there before. We've kind of been there before, but we've had a situation where we've had to request for debt forgiveness, and this was in 2004.
Yes.
Prior to 2004, the Abacha administration at some point stopped paying Paris Club debts. In fact, one of the implications of debt default is that the interest do not stop rolling. So I think the Abacha administration stopped paying Paris Club debts for maybe 2 to 3 years, and those debts increased by $4 billion. Just on penalties for not paying and arrears on interest payments. So if we stop paying, the debt would even continue to increase because you get penalized for not paying your debts. You get so interest payments continue to accrue on those loans, and then the debt will just keep increasing. So that's the first step. However, there are options, right? If Nigeria were to default on its loans today, and frankly, I don't think that we're there yet. However, we're inching very closely to that point. But if Nigeria were to default on its loans today, there are options of debt restructuring, asking for debt forgiveness, and some other things. Borrowing some more, and there's so many options. So I'm just going to touch on a few of them. So if we're to request for debt restructuring today, maybe from the IMF or the World Bank or even the capital markets, it's very expensive. If the Nigerian government met with the IMF today to request for a debt restructuring, they would request that Nigeria make some certain changes to its economy to prevent the situation we're in now from repeating itself, because no one wants to forgive you. Imagine lending someone money today and the person doesn't pay back, and then the person comes to meet you to forgive them, give me some more time and blah, blah, blah. And then you see the person maybe in the club popping bottles. There's the question of, are you serious about paying your loans? I forgave you, I gave you extra time, and here you are wasting away this
money. Are you normal?
So,
like Mr. Fiki will ask.
So the IMF and other multilateral organizations would request that Nigeria take some stringent fiscal reforms, like removing subsidies, cutting down the civil service, just taking out unnecessary spending that we're currently engaged in right now. For other people, like the bilateral partners, maybe China, Paris Club, and even the capital markets, right? They would still go to the IMF. So recently, I think it's Zambia or an African country has requested, even Ghana is in talks with the IMF for a bailout, right? So countries are going to meet their creditors and saying, you know what, we can no longer pay our loans. What do we do? Countries like Sri Lanka, that have even declared bankruptcy, have gone to meet their creditors to say, you know what do we do in this situation? And usually what happens is that the CBN, the IMF is always involved in the conversations as well. So they don't come to meet you alone. They come to meet you with the IMF and says, you know what, IMF, what can you do for these people to ensure that even though we forgive them today, they'll pay our loans in the future? So that takes us back to the initial plan of like these stringent policies. These austerity measures would affect us. They would affect you and I, because what it means is that once you remove subsidies, and this is something that the government should have done, now it's quite dire now. So once they remove subsidies, petrol costs would increase significantly. Imagine having to pay 500 naira for 1 liter of petrol. It's not impossible, because that's where we are. So once they remove the subsidies, they remove some excess payments here and there, Nigerians will feel the pinch. But however, in the long run, it's good for us, because once the economy is stable, investments come in and, the economy gets better. Once the economy is stable, it's a long-term journey. It's going to be painful, a slow and painful process, but, it has to still happen. For bilateral partners, however, for you to negotiate a debt forgiveness, they would only give you a debt forgiveness if they feel like they have something to gain. In some cases, for instance, they would give you a debt forgiveness if they feel like, the people, if I think it was in the 1980s, the Brady Plan, where the bilateral partners, some American banks, gave some debt forgiveness to Latin American countries, because they knew that a lot of their banks had loaned out to these countries. And if they default on their loans, if they're not able to structure it well, if they're not able to help them hold their hand through it, their banks, the American banks will fall for it as well. So another case is if they feel like, if a country feels like you're in a serious debt situation and they have like trade partnerships with you, and they know that if the country fails, chances of them either exporting successfully or importing your goods would be tampered with, then they support you. So Nigeria needs to ask itself, are we in a situation where we're advantaged anyone trade-wise? An example of an advantage that we can tap into now is the demand for gas in Europe, right? The EU has already approached Nigeria to sort of help it to fund the pipeline running from, I think, Nigeria to Algeria, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Algeria,
a pipeline that would basically help to, channel gas from Nigeria to
Algeria,
the EU, to Europe, so that it can sort of, because it's struggling with getting gas from Russia, they need alternatives now. Now is the best time to show yourself as a good alternative. But with the situation in the Niger Delta where, crude oil production is low, crude oil production affects the gas production, and then we're not able to even produce enough to even give Europe, and then no one looks at you as a good enough alternative. So these are the different options that exist for you. If we get to a debt default situation now, Nigerians will feel the pinch the most, even more than the Nigerian government. So now is the time for for Nigeria to actually attempt to improve its situation, either by reducing its debt, reducing its expenses, trying to ramp up revenue. Ramping up revenue would mean, improving your crude oil production situation and ensuring that you position yourself as a good enough trade partner to other.
Well, it's a good thing that we just signed that MOU, for those gas lines to run from Warri to Algeria. So hopefully we're able to make it work. But I do like that we've done that. We've signed the agreement to make it happen. Fingers crossed that it's actually really successful. Something you said was quite striking. You mentioned subsidies, right? And the time to remove subsidies was years ago, but the time to remove it is also still now. But there's still a lot of reluctance to remove things like fuel subsidy, for instance. So I have to ask, and you're the expert in the room, Is there a way out of this debt problem without cutting down on spending? Is there a way? No.
It's very difficult. I want to say no.
No.
But they're not. The best way is by increasing revenue in such an astronomical way that, we wouldn't even know that we're not cutting down on our expenses.
Do you think Nigeria can get another debt forgiveness?
Yeah. It's not impossible. It's actually not impossible.
But the conditions that existed when we got it the first time don't exist anymore. Under Obasanjo, when Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was finance minister, there was at that time a global movement in support of debt forgiveness for Africa. Those conditions don't exist today. So, is it possible?
They actually do. I think sometime last month or early this month, the G20 countries, top largest countries in the world, actually met with the IMF to discuss the common framework for debt restructuring and debt forgiveness. Because a lot of African countries are nearing debt defaults, and the effect of COVID on the global economy is still, hurting the emerging economies like African countries more than the rest of the world. So there's already that awareness that there is a need for debt. There's going to be a need for debt restructuring and debt forgiveness in the future. However, debt forgiveness and restructuring would only come when, they feel like you're in an extreme dire situation. You need to be down bad for you to be given debt forgiveness. And that does not mean that Nigeria isn't there. I mean, we're actually in a severe situation at the moment.
What's that, Pascari?
But so it's very possible that we can get debt forgiveness. But before we get there, there's no guarantee that Nigerians would not suffer inconsiderably. And I mean, so the thing is, at the point we're in now, with 2004, the creditors understood that Nigeria was taking very active steps to improve its debt situation. We're paying back loans, and we're paying back the loans well. And then we had just come out of military regime. The economy was stabilizing. There was a lot of privatization of government assets. There was a lot of push for private sector-led growth in the economy. So all those moves, like I said, the IMF would want to see that you're putting your house in order. Countries and creditors would want to see that there's progress going on in the economy before they agree to give you debt forgiveness. Where we are today, I mean, crude oil production is low, and a lot of IOCs are leaving the country because cost of producing crude oil is just so high. So things like security of your pipelines, those are the things that you should fix for people to even know that you're serious about, putting your fiscal situation in order. So we're not doing that right now. So even if the debt forgiveness will come, it won't come without severe hurts to Nigerian economy.
Okay, well, let's talk about personal money. Chipa is in the building to share information with you, yes?
Yes. We are back, and I am here to ask several questions. And if you're listening to Nigeria Info, you've heard these questions multiple times. So let me just go easy on you and ask you why you haven't got your Chipa card, Naira or USD. Why aren't you enjoying 2% discount on airtime? And why aren't you enjoying a 5% cash back when you shop with your Chipa card? Why would you have to go through the gang of paying fees for local transfers and spending money to send money? We don't do that here. We're all for advanced movement, advanced, living. So get your Chipper card right now. Don't waste time. Bank on Chipper. You can download the app on Play Store or Apple Store and get transacting for cheaper on Chipper. Have a nice day.
Bemisola Longe is from Steers. She's a senior development analyst there, and we've been talking about Nigeria's fiscal policy, fiscal situation? What changes should the finance ministry be making? And my final question before I let you go, I've got just 1 minute for you to answer that question. Some candidates are who are hoping to be president next year have talked about restructuring the debt. Are there vehicles out there for restructuring this level of debt where debt servicing is 118% of revenue?
Yes, there are. I had already, some of the things I mentioned about, meeting the IMF are part of the things, that's one vehicle to restructure debts. However, restructuring the debt might mean that we would, so for instance, changing short-term debt to long-term bonds, giving people who have like 2-year, 5-year bonds, 30-year bond, 50-year bonds. But then that means that as an investor, as a borrower, as a lender, you are trusting the Nigerian economy for a long term and for the long term. And that would come at yet another, at a higher interest rate. However, it's not impossible to do that. Will that solve so the thing is, we need to stop looking for short-term solutions to structural, deep problems. Restructuring the loans will not solve the issue of revenue. It will not solve the issue of consistent expenditure, spending on things that you shouldn't be spending on. So those are the things that we need to focus on. How can we ramp up revenue? How can we increase revenue? How can we reduce excesses in the civil service and just the excesses in government spending? Those are the things that the government should focus on, and these new candidates should be focusing on. Tell Nigerians how you plan to make more money for Nigeria. If anyone is saying about restructuring debt and not saying how they're going to improve it, they're only just going to be in this situation in 5 years' time, in 4 years' time, and we don't want that.
Let's leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. 2 times in a row. I owe you a salary at this point. But thank you for your time. Thank you so much. All right, Lagos, that's all the time I have. But you can keep talking with me on social media. Sandra Ezekwesili, that's my handle everywhere. Ezekwesili everywhere. Coming up is the news at 6. Those were your hard facts. Lagos, good night.
We are back. It's
And I want to assume that you would run because I want to give the listeners context for the conversation.
In 2019, you were running mate to Atiku Abubakar. What did you learn then that you will not repeat this time?
Yes, when is the president coming out to address us?
There's a few things. One, I have a burden and a passion for young people.
The fact that you have elected a man does not mean then you begin to order him around. The president will do whatever is good for the country at any given time.
Mr. Adeshino, isn't the president responsible to the people?
What should the next president do to root out stakeholders who are complicit?
You fire those that need to be fired are fired.
It's looking like a brand new Chelsea, attacking with so much fluidity. And what can you say about that, Martin? I know you follow Chelsea quite closely.
I live close to the Chelsea training ground. That's what you mean by that. I'm not.